So we're taking a closer look at President Trump's decision to withdraw U.S. troops from Syria. There's about 2,000 American service members there right now. They're helping allies fight the last remaining ISIS militants holed up in the war-torn country.
Critics argue pulling troops out now would jeopardize America's mission in Syria and hurt allies. There are fears an early exit could create a vacuum for ISIS or other terror groups to thrive. For more on this, we want to bring in Josh Geltzer. He's the executive director for Georgetown Law's Institute for Constitutional Advocacy and Protection. He's also the former senior director for counterterrorism at the National Security Council, and he's with us from Washington to help break all of this down. Josh, good morning. As you know, ISIS has lost nearly all of its territory in Syria. What's at risk if the U.S. actually withdraws all of its troops within the next 30 days?
There has been a ton of progress against ISIS. As you say, they've been cleared from much of the territory they once held, but progress is not the same as completing the mission. Even our own government has estimated that there are thousands of fighters who remain, and those fighters have begun transitioning into a terrorist network that's still capable of carrying out deadly attacks. So there's still work to be done to complete that and ensure that the territory once held by the group is now governed responsibly.
So the U.S. has been advising and assisting Kurdish troops in Syria, identifying targets for missile strikes because it's crucial to have somebody on the ground, people on the ground to identify those targets. The Kurds call this announcement a stab in the back. They're known for being fearsome fighters, but can they defeat ISIS without American aid?
Probably not, and it's not clear that they even intend to try. That is, some of the indications this morning suggest that without American support, the Kurds are pulling away from the counter-ISIS mission and defending themselves against the Turks. That's always been a tension for them, and it's been an effort across administrations by the U.S. to keep the Kurds in the fight against ISIS, obviously our priority there. But in light of this announcement, it's hard to imagine that they'll want to keep investing in that fight, even though, as I mentioned before, I think that fight needs to go on.
Of course, Josh, only time will tell. Russian President Vladimir Putin praised the announcement. What does a U.S. troop withdrawal in Syria mean for Russia and Iran as they continue fighting for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's brutal regime?
It's probably not a good sign for U.S. policy these days when it's getting praised by Vladimir Putin. Our interests diverge in many respects, and certainly when it comes to the future of Syria, our country and Russia have been at odds on that for a number of years now. And instead of continuing to do the hard work of figuring out what a future for this war-torn country can look like, we're essentially abandoning our leverage, abandoning at least much of what might give us influence in those conversations by taking our troops out. That seems like it's going to invite others who want to assert power and influence there, namely Russia and Iran, a chance to roll right in.
Josh, when I heard this announcement yesterday, I just kept on thinking, why now? Was this an attempt at a distraction? I know in the spring the president wanted to do this, and it's not like he hasn't brought it up before, but in the spring he was really eager. His advisors, his generals suggested otherwise. He listened to their advice that time around. Not so now, and almost immediately there was a lot of criticism. Why now?
I wish I knew, and it really speaks to something that goes beyond Syria and ISIS and some of the issues we've been talking about. It's about national security decision-making as a process. A process isn't always sexy or exciting, but in national security, it's vital. It's vital to be intelligence-driven when it comes to threats. It's vital to hear from the military and understand what they think different options are and different futures, to hear from diplomats, to hear from that whole array of the U.S. national security team that tries to take a whole-of-government approach to these issues. And every indication is that's not the process that led to yesterday's startling announcement. It's not clear what led to it.
And Josh, you study this for a living. You have been for years. What advice would you give to President Trump on this issue?
Rethink it. That's the most candid piece of advice I could give. We all sometimes make decisions poorly and quickly, and I suspect he's done that here. And to sit down with those who don't seem to have been part of this conversation, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, sit down with the Secretary of Defense, sit down with the Secretary of State, hear from the intelligence community, and be open to rethinking it and recalibrating the approach, that to me would be a sign of actual political strength here.
All right, Josh Geltzer, thank you so much.
Thank you.